Have you ever received a compliment and felt silent afterward? Not because it moved you, but because it felt unreal. As if behind every sweet word, something cold was quietly hiding. A look that didn't truly celebrate your success. A person who always supports you, but is never there when you need them. Envy and falsehood don't shout. They wear polite faces, and that's what makes them dangerous. Stoic philosophy doesn't teach us to be cynical. It teaches us to see clearly, not through blind emotion, not through rehearsed words, but through action, silence, and intuition. We cannot control the hearts of others, but we can control our own perception. When you learn to notice the signs hidden beneath kindness, you don't grow bitter, you grow alert. And alertness is the foundation of peace. In this video, I'll share with you 10 subtle signs to recognize envy and falsehood in everyday life. 1. They speak well, but disappear when you need them. Some people show up when the spotlight is bright, but vanish when the room goes dark. They're there when you're winning, but nowhere to be found when you fall. They're masters of uplifting words, artists of kind phrases, always knowing what to say, when to say it, and to whom. But when reality knocks, when you truly need someone by your side, even in silence, they're suddenly busy, off the grid, or not available. A friend once told me, "I support you no matter what you do." It sounded comforting. But when I went through the hardest time in my life, a painful breakup, an unexpected job loss, that person didn't send a single message. No call, no simple, "Are you okay?" But months later, when I landed a new opportunity and shared it online, they immediately commented, "I always believed in you. I knew you'd make it." Those words no longer touched me. They felt weightless, like a dry leaf falling onto water, leaving not even a ripple. In Stoic philosophy, we are reminded, a man is not measured by what he declares, but by how he shows up in silence. Those who truly care don't need to say, "I'm here for you." They simply are. Quietly, humbly, without needing to prove anything. They arrive when no one else does. They step in when others walk away, and you never have to ask them to. The world today is full of voices. Social media turns everyone into a speaker, a motivator. But presence cannot be manufactured through images. Sincerity can't be edited into a video. And true friendship isn't something that shows up in a caption. You might hear someone say, "Call me anytime." But if you've called and they didn't pick up, then that's where the truth lives. The ones who walk with you don't wait for a signal. They see your weariness and they step closer. No invitation, no excuse. Don't get me wrong. Just because someone is busy doesn't mean they're fake. We all have limits. But when a person always shows up when you succeed and always disappears when you're hurting, that's not coincidence, that's a pattern. And patterns speak volumes. Think back to your weakest moments. Who stood beside you? Who called without needing a reason? Who quietly left a message that said, "I'm here"? And then think about those who said they'd always be there. But when you broke down, all you saw was your own reflection on an empty phone screen. Stoic philosophy doesn't ask you to judge others, but it teaches you to see clearly, to stop investing hope in hollow promises, to avoid wounding yourself again for those who only show up when life is treating you well. As Epictetus once wrote, "Do not ask from others what they cannot give. Ask yourself why you expected it." When you realize their absence isn't a mistake, but their nature, you will stop being angry. You will simply walk away, quietly and peacefully. And that is strength. 2. They congratulate you, but their eyes say otherwise. Some congratulations don't come from the heart, only from the lips. Some handshakes are firm, yet cold. Some smiles arrive at the perfect time, in the perfect place, under social expectation, but their eyes can't hide something else. A vague discomfort, a subtle twitch near the brow. A flicker of unease that vanishes as fast as it came. Have you ever felt that? You just received good news, a victory after years of effort. People gather around, smiling, laughing, toasting, but in that crowd, there's one glance that unsettles you. It doesn't reflect joy. It doesn't shine like the others. It's like a cracked mirror, distorting your happiness into something strange and fragile. In Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Do not be fooled by applause, for praise can be a mask for contempt." The envious don't always stay silent. Many of them are the first to congratulate you. They do everything right so they won't be suspected. But the unease you feel from them isn't coincidence. It's your intuition warning you. An old friend once showered me with praise when I was chosen for a major project. Her words were perfect, her smile wide. But later, I heard she told colleagues I got lucky, that everyone has their moment in the spotlight. I wasn't angry. I simply learned this. The envious don't always attack you, they quietly shrink you in the eyes of others. Pay attention not just to what they say, but why they say it. Do they truly celebrate your success, or are they afraid their silence will reveal the truth? Are they clapping for your win, or just trying to maintain a place in your circle? Remember, envy isn't always a strike, often it's a distorted caress. It blurs the line between ally and quiet competitor. And if you don't learn to tell the difference, you'll exhaust yourself, giving your heart to hands that can't hold it. But here's what matters. You don't need to react to envy. No confrontation, no exposure. Stoicism teaches the wise do not need to conquer others' emotions, only their own reactions. When you sense the false gaze behind a congratulation, you don't need to push back. Just take a step back, observe, stay steady, and keep moving forward. Because your joy does not require the other's validation to be real. It is whole in itself, born of your honest effort. And no pair of eyes, no matter how cold, can take that from you. 3. They're kind to the powerful, but dismissive of the weak. There's a kind of person who never forgets to say thank you to their boss, but doesn't bother nodding at the parking attendant. They shake hands firmly with someone with a title, but won't make eye contact with the barista. These people act as if respect is a gift only given to those who can offer them something in return. To those deemed not worth the investment, they're cold, impatient, even disdainful. I once worked with a manager whose behavior was a contradiction. In front of executives, he was polite, humble, speaking softly and carefully, but alone with staff, he became someone else, harsh, loud, ready to mock over the smallest mistake. I remember one time, a nervous new hire brought the wrong documents into a meeting. In front of everyone, that manager snapped, "Do you have a brain?" Then turned to me and laughed like it was a joke. But the young man's eyes were downcast. No one laughed, and no one forgot. In Stoic philosophy, Seneca once wrote, "To know a person's true nature, watch how they treat those who can give them nothing." A noble soul makes no distinction in status. They treat the janitor and the CEO with equal respect because they understand. Respect is not an exchange, it's an inner quality. It doesn't shift with context or sway with gain. The fake are different. They are polite not because they're kind, but because they're calculating what they might gain. For them, kindness is a tool, a means to climb. And once you lose value in that climb, the kindness disappears. Watch closely in a group conversation who always faces the most powerful person, laughs louder for the important one, but barely acknowledges the rest. In a restaurant, who is rude to the waiter because the food was late. These behaviors are not minor. They are signs of a character shaped by hierarchy, not by ethics. Stoicism doesn't teach us to treat everyone identically, but to remain consistent with ourselves. The strong don't need to act strong. They don't need to decide who deserves respect and who doesn't. Because within them, respect is not something activated by title, money, or power. It is a way of being. You can see someone's character in the smallest moments. A greeting to the cleaner, a gentle "it's okay" to someone who slipped up, a gaze that meets every person no matter their role as an equal. And when you see someone who bows to power but raises their voice at the powerless, don't argue. Don't react. Just step back, observe carefully, and remind yourself, this is a person who lives by status, not by values. And that is a soul that's lost its way. 4. Their compliment feels like a trap. Some compliments make you smile, and some make you pause. Not because they lack goodwill, but because they're overdone. Too smooth, too perfect, as if they were crafted to leave a good impression rather than coming from genuine feeling. Such praise leaves you wondering, do they truly admire you? Or are they trying to win you over? Are they complimenting you or assessing you? I once heard someone tell me, "I really admire your work ethic. How are you always this good at everything?" At first it sounded like admiration, but the emphasis on always hinted at something else. It wasn't praise, it was a subtle jab wrapped in flattery, suggesting that my success was unnatural, unsustainable, or somehow suspicious. And I realized some compliments are coated in sugar to hide the needle inside. Stoicism doesn't reject praise. It reminds us to be aware of what we're hearing and from whom. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't let others' admiration become a chain that pulls you away from your own nature." A compliment that isn't sincere doesn't make us better. It makes us doubt ourselves, or worse, makes us dependent on external validation. And once you rely on praise, you'll start altering yourself to keep receiving it, even if it means abandoning your core values. A sincere person doesn't praise you to manipulate you. They say something kind when they truly see something worth acknowledging. They don't exaggerate emotions or inflate results. They say just enough, and you can feel the steadiness in their tone. No dramatics, no sparkle, but you believe them because they expect nothing in return. By contrast, a fake person uses praise as bait to win your favor, to soften your defenses, to get closer, and when the moment comes, they'll use that closeness to steer you in their direction. Maybe to compete, to claim your position, or to pursue their own gain. Praise becomes a tactic, and if you don't see it, you'll be led without knowing. So how do you tell the difference? Watch for consistency. Someone who praises you publicly but never shows up when you need support, they're not admiring you, they're constructing an image. Someone who always praises you but never speaks honestly when you're wrong, they don't care about you, they're avoiding conflict for their own reasons. Stoicism teaches, a compliment has no value if it takes you further from who you are. Learn to step half a pace back when sweet words come your way. Don't reject the praise, but let your mind filter it, not your ego. Don't reflect the words as truth, examine where they come from, because someone who truly values you won't leave you confused after praise. They'll leave you calm and more confident, not because you were praised, but because you were understood. 5. They shift their behavior depending on who's watching. Some people make you feel like you're talking to two different versions of them. When it's just the two of you, they're friendly, approachable, open and warm. But when someone else appears, especially someone they view as higher in the social hierarchy, they become someone else entirely. Their tone changes. Their eyes shift. The way they treat you changes. As if you were just part of the background, no longer someone who matters. Have you ever seen a coworker who laughs and chats with you at lunch, sharing personal stories, but then goes cold the moment a manager walks in? They become formal, only turning to you when they need to make a point or assign blame. That shift is not harmless. It signals they don't treat you with sincerity, but with strategy. And in their eyes, you're not a companion, you're a position, a benefit, a tool to be picked up or put down when convenient. A Stoic does not perform. They are the same no matter who's present, no matter the setting. Epictetus once said, "Live so that whether seen or unseen, you remain one and the same." Consistency isn't effort. It's the natural expression of someone living by clear values. Changing attitudes based on who's around, that's a clear sign of inauthenticity. Of someone guided not by reason, but by social calculation. I once had a friend who was always kind when we were alone. But in larger groups, especially if someone they wanted to impress was present, they turned distant, quiet, as if I were an extra in their scene. At first, I blamed myself, did I do something wrong? But then I realized I wasn't wrong. I just wasn't useful to them at that moment. Their kindness didn't come from the heart, it came from circumstance. And I walked away without anger. Because with people like that, words are unnecessary, silence says enough. Fake people adapt to fit their role. In front of power, they're respectful, humble, cautious with every word. In front of those who seem weaker or carry no status, they're dismissive, cold, even domineering. With you, they may seem kind, until someone more important shows up. Then you'll feel yourself quietly pushed aside subtly, but clearly if you're observant enough to notice. And if you've ever felt left out in a group where you were once trusted, you've already felt that shift. It's not you who changed, it's them returning to their main role. A role where you were never in the script, you were only ever a temporary audience. Stoicism teaches, the strong don't need to prove. They don't play roles, they simply show up. When you notice someone change faces depending on who's around, don't rush to label them. Observe more. But remember, consistency is the clearest mirror of character. And if you have to wonder where you stand in someone's eyes, chances are you've never truly had a place in their heart. 6. They can't handle feedback. There's a kind of person who always appears confident, always talks about growth, always says they're open to feedback. But the moment you offer something sincere, no matter how gently, no matter how constructive, the atmosphere shifts. Their eyes dim, their tone cools, they begin to defend, to deflect, or worse, to attack. Suddenly, you're the negative one, the one who just doesn't get them, the one who always criticizes others. I once gave a colleague a suggestion. I think if you tighten the intro, it'll be easier for the audience to follow. She had asked for feedback, but instantly the air between us changed. She forced a smile and said, "Thanks, but that's just my style." A week later, I overheard her saying, "Always try to act like I know everything, and don't support my friends." From one simple suggestion, a wall went up. And behind that wall, there was no more dialogue, only defense. Stoicism sees criticism as a gift. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone shows you where you're wrong, thank them as a guide." A strong mind isn't threatened by feedback because it doesn't tie self-worth to being right. It knows it's still learning, not trying to protect an image. On the other hand, a fake person doesn't see feedback as growth, they see it as an attack. They can't distinguish between malice and goodwill. To them, anyone who reveals their flaws is a threat. They react instead of reflect. They reject instead of consider. Because their ego is more fragile than their reason. It's not being wrong they fear, it's being seen as wrong. A clear sign is how their behavior shifts after feedback. Before, there may have been warmth, closeness, even trust. But after one honest comment, however kind, they grow distant, cold, even evasive. And if you're perceptive, you'll see. It wasn't your words that were too harsh, it was their inner world that was too fragile. Stoicism doesn't tell you to critique everyone. But when you have a relationship built on trust, and you offer feedback with genuine intent, watch how it's received. That reaction reveals the depth of their character. A strong person may not agree, but they still listen. A fake one may smile, but inside, they're already shutting down. And if you've ever hesitated to give someone feedback out of fear, it would hurt them. Ask yourself, why can't this relationship handle a simple truth? If honesty drives someone away, was the closeness ever real? Stoicism teaches us to face truth even when it comes from others, because only those who can hear about their flaws can grow. And only those unafraid of feedback are truly worthy of walking beside you. But if someone only keeps you around when you're silent and leaves when you're honest, then they don't need a friend. They need a mirror that nods. 7. They always compare, even when no one asks. You share a small story about your success, not to boast, but simply to express joy. And yet the person in front of you, instead of congratulating you, smiles and says, "That's nice, but I think Jenny's done even more." A comparison that seems harmless on the surface, yet slices through your rising emotion like a fine blade. No clear malice, no direct attack, just a quiet way of pulling you down by elevating someone else. This is the kind of person who can't let others shine unless they stand in a brighter light. They can't witness your progress without feeling left behind. They can't hear your joy without thinking of someone who's done better. To them, the world is a scoreboard, and every conversation is an invisible competition. Stoic philosophy teaches us that comparison is one of the worst forms of wasted energy, for it pulls us off our personal path and makes us forget who we are. Epictetus once said, "The wise look neither upward in envy nor downward in contempt. They look inward to grow better each day." So the one who constantly measures you against others doesn't truly care about anyone's success. They're just trying to hold their place in their own imagined hierarchy. The inauthentic will always have another name to drop, another person's achievement to mention, another but to slip into your moments of joy. They don't confront you directly. They just plant a little doubt, a little hesitation, a subtle feeling that maybe you're not enough. And then you start to question, am I just average? Am I fooling myself about my success? Do I need to do more to prove something? That is the trap of comparison. It robs you of the present moment and gratitude for what you've overcome. It pushes you into an endless contest against opponents that don't exist, on a racetrack with no finish line. The sincere don't see your success as a threat. They don't need to define you against someone else. They listen, they celebrate, and they're present just for you, without conditions. But the envious will always try to squeeze someone else into your story, to remind you that you're not the only one. So if you feel drained every time you share something positive with someone, if you constantly have to defend your joy against subtle comparisons, pause and reflect. Stoicism doesn't teach us to respond in anger to such people. But it reminds us, The mind is only harmed when it allows itself to be. You can hear their comparisons, smile, and hold on to one truth. Your journey doesn't have to surpass anyone, it just has to be true to you. And that is enough for you to keep walking, steady and free, with no need for anyone's approval. 8. When they fail, they don't learn. They blame. Some people fail and grow. Others fail and build a wall of blame around themselves, like a fortress to protect a crumbling ego. They don't ask, "Where did I go wrong?" They ask, "Who did this to me?" They don't seek a lesson, they seek a culprit. And in doing so, they lose the most valuable gift failure can offer, the chance to see themselves clearly. I once worked on a group project with someone who appeared very confident. When the final results fell short, instead of analyzing what went wrong and learning from it, she quickly listed everything others failed to do. The design was weak, time was short, the client was unreasonable, but never once did she mention her own role. In her world, she was always the victim, never the cause. Stoicism never shies away from failure. On the contrary, it sees failure as the most honest mirror for revealing who we are. Seneca once said, "Hard times don't shape a person, they reveal them." And those who blame instead of learning are often simply not ready to face themselves. They don't lack ability, they lack the courage to admit imperfection. When the inauthentic fail, they immediately reach for an excuse, the more external, the better. They say, "If only that person hadn't interfered. If only the circumstances weren't so unfair. If only I'd had the right support." All those if-onlys aren't meant to improve, they're meant to escape accountability. And when you hear such words repeated, you realize they don't truly want to grow, they want to run from the truth. And the sincere? They may feel disappointed, even blame themselves at first, but then they face the mistake and ask, "What can I learn from this?" They don't cast blame, they take ownership. They understand that no one goes through life without error, but how we face our errors defines everything. So if you're near someone who always blames others when things go wrong, step back and observe. Not to judge, but to ask yourself, are you being pulled into their narrative of blame? Because sometimes, just by being present, you risk becoming part of the web they weave to avoid self-awareness. Stoicism reminds us, adversity doesn't hurt us, it's the refusal to learn from it that does. When you choose to take responsibility, you not only grow, you become free. But if you hide in the comfort of blame, you stay trapped in the outdated version of yourself. So when someone fails and their first reaction is to accuse, deflect, or collapse, understand that the problem isn't the situation. It's the inner sign that growth hasn't begun. And you have a choice. Stay and get pulled in, or step out and walk your own path of learning. 9. They talk about themselves like they're writing a novel. There are people who, when they speak of themselves, make you feel like you're watching a heavily edited reality show or reading a dramatized memoir. Every detail is curated for effect, every story colored for impact, every failure transformed into an epic struggle, and every success told as if they were the hero of a grand saga. And the more you listen, the more something feels off. I once knew someone who always told their life story like they were pitching for a prestigious scholarship. When they spoke of the past, they emphasized their harsh childhood, their early independence, their cold floor nights studying. When they spoke of the present, they highlighted unmatched achievements, praise from the highest-ranking person, and moments where they turned down big offers to stay true to their principles. Everything was polished, perfectly toned, all serving one image: perfection. But when we worked together, I saw they never took responsibility when things went wrong, dodged specifics when asked follow-up questions, and slowly, the gap between their stories and reality became too wide to ignore. In Stoic philosophy, Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You don't have to tell people who you are. Live in a way that lets them see it." The more someone tries to craft an image, the more it shows they lack faith in their true self. They fear being seen in imperfection, so they wrap themselves in a radiant shell, a kind of armor, a kind of mask. And the longer they live in that performance, the further they drift from who they really are. The inauthentic don't tell stories to connect, they tell them to impress. They never mention their weaknesses, avoid discussing poor decisions, and never admit failure without attaching some kind of inspiring lesson. They tell their story like a director editing their own biopic full of drama, suspense, and a triumphant ending. But if you pay attention, you'll notice the holes, mismatched details, unverifiable events, achievements no one can confirm. The sincere, on the other hand, speak plainly. They don't hide failure, don't dodge mistakes, don't hesitate to admit their past immaturity. Their story isn't flashy, doesn't need emphasis, but you believe them because you sense the truth in every word. They're not trying to impress you, they just want to be understood. Stoicism teaches us, the wise care not for applause, they focus on training the mind. When someone is obsessed with crafting an image, ask yourself, what are they trying to hide? The more someone needs to cover, the more they fear being truly seen. And the complexity of their story isn't meant to help you understand them, it's meant to keep you from getting too close. So when you hear someone speak about themselves with flawless detail, polished delivery, and the charm of a professional host, don't rush to believe. Listen with your heart and your clarity, because the truth doesn't need embellishment, and the strongest souls are always quieter than we expect. 10. You feel that something is off. The signs aren't always obvious. Fakeness doesn't always arrive with harsh words or blatant behavior. Sometimes it's just a fleeting feeling, a subtle tension in your chest when you enter a room with someone, a quiet unease when they look at you even if they're smiling, a silence thin as paper but you can feel it, and you can't explain why. You've sat across from someone who says all the right things, behaves properly, seems like someone you should trust. Yet you can't relax. You can't open up. You can't shake the feeling that something doesn't fit. As if their words are pre-programmed, as if behind their eyes is a two-way mirror. You see them, but you're not sure they let you see them. That feeling doesn't come from logic. It comes from somewhere deeper. In Stoic philosophy, we're taught to listen not only with reason, but with instinct. Epictetus once said, "Within each of us is a whisper that knows the truth, if we are silent enough to hear it." Intuition is not vague imagination. It's the distillation of experience, observation, and perception, tiny bits of data our conscious mind can't process fast enough, but our deeper mind already understands. And when intuition tells you there's something off about this person, you'd be wise to trust that feeling at least enough to take a step back. A fake person can bypass logic, but they can't outrun the consistency of energy. Someone may speak kind words, tell compelling stories, act respectfully, but if they're not real, you'll feel the imbalance. Not in their actions, but in the invisible gap between them and you. A feeling like you're standing beside someone but still feel alone. Like you're being praised, but don't feel joy. And when you try to dismiss that feeling, you deceive yourself. You come up with excuses for them. Maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe they're just tired. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. But deep down, you still know. That feeling doesn't leave. because it doesn't come from fear, it comes from truth. Stoicism doesn't encourage paranoia, but it teaches the courage to trust your own perception even without proof. Because someone who lives by reason doesn't need evidence to step away from what unsettles them. They need inner peace, and that is reason enough to choose differently. So if you sense something isn't right about someone, even if you can't explain it, trust that feeling. Not to accuse them, but to protect yourself. Your peace is worth more than a relationship filled with doubt. And sometimes, the greatest wisdom lies in the decision not to take one more step when your mind is telling you, stop. I used to think that to spot a fake person, I needed clear proof, a caught lie, a betrayal, an undeniable moment. But I've come to realize, the most dangerous people leave no trace. They live in small things, a glance lacking warmth, a compliment too polished, a silence timed perfectly to avoid helping you. And that's why observation can't rely on reason alone. It requires the sensitivity of the soul. The hardest part isn't spotting deception in others. It's accepting that the very people who once made you feel safe are sometimes the ones who hurt you the most. But Stoicism taught me, no one can hurt you unless you allow it. And once I learned to step back, look closely, and stay centered, I finally understood what peace really means. If you found the lessons in this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future content. Because sometimes, the way you look at a person determines how you quietly protect yourself. See you in the next video.